This is part 2 of our session with Drew Tucker. I won't bore you with the details. It's a lot of good stuff. Watch it. If you missed part 1, I'll put a link to it down in the description and somewhere up here. Subscribe, alerts, likes. If you can only pick one, pick likes. That's going to help YouTube determine that this is good stuff and that it needs to push it out in front of other people's eyeballs. That's the only way we're going to get our message out and help people grow. If you have any questions for Drew Tucker or anyone else in the Studio 14 team, put them down in the comments below. If it's a great question, it may even become the subject of our next session. Either way, you never know how much a question you ask or a comment you put down there can help somebody else. So here we go, Drew Tucker, the sequel. So when did you get started with music?
Piano lessons at 4, and I have a lot of older brothers who griped and moaned and hated it, and my parents let them quit. And by the time I was griping and moaning about quitting, they had already regretted quitting. They were old enough to have regretted it, so they shared that with my parents and said, just don't let them quit because we regret it. We wish you never let us quit. And so they didn't let me quit. So they just stuck with it and said, we're not going to deal with you having regret too. But now I have different kinds of regrets, because I didn't quit. So at Loggers Run Middle School, they did not have a piano option. And saxophone was filled, thank God. So they gave me, they put me on percussion, and the rest is history. Vibes came around because of Drum Choir March Magic in 96, 97. And Jerry Carpenter was jamming on some jazz vibes in the parking lot one day. And I was like, what is that? He's like, man, this is Footprints, man. And I'm like, Footprint? But where's the music? He's like, no music, man, this is jazz. That's what he said.
Jerry is awesome, man. Like, I love Jerry.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, how can I learn this art? So he's like, yeah, I'm playing the chords and the changes. And so I went home and found a jazz teacher, Errol Rakipov, and he just put me hip. He studied with Gary Burton, and it was a blessing that he lived in Miami. He was teaching at FIU and a little at UM, and he just put me hip to all this stuff. And the rest is history, man.
Were you with Magic the year that they won what was then Division II, and then
yeah,
were you marching or okay.
That was my age out year, 2002. Yeah, so that was amazing. That was amazing, and I had gotten cut from. I tried to march the year before that, but I had gotten cut from Blue Devils and Cavaliers, and then 2002 I was going to go back and do it again. And try it again. Cavaliers I got cut because of attitude, and Blue Devils I got cut like up to every day's. It just didn't work out. So long story short, but then I got a call from John Campese, and Campese was like, "We're bringing back Magic, man. We need you." And the idea of a severely reduced tuition and the staff, and just like, you'll be the guy, and 21 years old. I was like, all right, I don't have to try, driving instead of flying across country. I was like, all right, why even? I'll go with the sure thing. And honestly, it was tough, man, but it was we're the only group to ever compete 6 nights, and finals week. So to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I remember marching out there, and they were like, whatever happens, be professional. I was like, oh my God, we lost Division II. Like, we came in second. Whatever happens, be professional, be professional. But then we got like a 99.05, which for 3 days was the highest score in DCI history. And then, then we went to quarterfinals. We performed at like crack of dawn. We were up at like 5 in the morning. And then we heard we beat Madison. We were freaking out. We came in 10th in quarters. No, 11th in quarters, 10th in semis. And we're like, that's it. We're winning tomorrow. We're winning. That's how, you're a student, man. It's like Boston after 2000. They thought they were winning the next year. And like, we're winning tomorrow, man. And then we came in 11th in finals, but it was really cool. It was a really cool story. It was really fun.
I was teaching Blue Knights that summer. We came in 13th, so thanks.
Oh, man, that's awkward. That's,
we weren't very good.
Thank you for whoever that was that missed that dot.
We should have had that sound effect.
I know, all right? I should have.
Yeah. I did like I only did a little bit that summer. I did like I think maybe 10 days of Blue Knights that summer, helping out a little bit.
I thank them for not hiring you more, because that might have changed the tide. But man, that was Gino, man. Gino taught me a lot of lessons that year. Gino was ruthless. He came in. I remember one girl wanted to quit all the time, and I kept, section leader, I couldn't let anyone quit, and I kept going into the dorm and being like, no, come on, you can do it. It's going to be okay. We'll all get through it together. And then one time I was looking for this girl, and he saw me from the ledge, and he's like, Drew, what are you doing? Why aren't you in rehearsal? It's like, oh, so-and-so wants to quit again. They're like, didn't she do that before? And I was like, yeah, it's like her fourth or fifth time. And she's like, maybe your energy is better spent trying to find someone to replace her than trying to talk her off the ledge every 3 days. I was like, huh, all right. And I turned around and that was it. And she quit that day. We found someone to replace her, man. It was pretty cool. But he was ruthless. We rehearsed every day. Saturday, we're in finals. We just won Division II. We don't need to rehearse. Like, nope, we did a full block. No underwear runs, no nothing. We just work. He came from cadets that year, so.
You mentioned that you came up into Vibes through drum corps. Would you have any advice for someone else that like maybe now sees like someone, like say someone that has seen you play and like, oh man, I want to do Vibes. Like any advice for them? Like if they're still in high school to get more experience with that, or
don't do it. Don't. I mean, unless you really love it. Like I really love this thing. Like honestly, like I play a note or two sometimes, and I sit and I just listen to it ring, man. I mean, I care about the sound of this thing. I think this thing is beautiful. Like I'm in love with the sound of this instrument. I love playing it. I love, performing with it. I just love hearing it. It's like, it does something for me, and so I think if somebody doesn't feel that way, they shouldn't do it, and I think that's what's kept me going with it through challenging times, through whatever times.
You could pretty much say that with any instrument or anything.
Yeah, you could. You could. I think for me though, and I had this, this is a particularly challenging instrument, and the whole it's not a xylophone thing has to do with I want it to be easier for the next people who came around. So if people don't know the name of it, how can it be easy if people don't even, who's paying for this thing if they don't even know what to call it? So at the end of the day, but you see a trumpet, most people are like, it's cool, it's a trumpet. Maybe not everybody. You see a violinish thing, and you're like, I can't tell you how many people are like, I want this thing for my wedding. I love violin. I love the sound of, just can I get a saxophone? Just give me one of the saxophones, or like a piano or a guitar. I want that kind of conversation to be held around a vibraphone. So that way somebody else who plays it, like, oh yeah, no problem. Like I know a vibraphone player, but I usually have to like bait and switch people. Well, no violin, but I'm gonna show up. And just show up, So what do you think of this sound? And they'll be like, oh, I like that sound. I'm like, all right, well, that's me, and I'll be there. So that's kind of the whole thing. So yeah, I think it is true of any instrument. I think it's true of music in general, or any art form. I don't think there's an easy career period, especially now. Everything that was like, oh, well, this is the route you should go because this is safer. There's nothing safe anymore. You might as well do the thing you love. I'd rather suffer doing that than suffer behind a desk and wait for, budget cuts. The government's cutting our whole department now, and now we got to go. I don't want that. I'd rather at least own it and love it.
How has this whole COVID thing affected you? Like as far as not necessarily just at the high school, but in your own personal, like the group you play with and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do. I'm more into this for a while, and once I realized that this thing had no obvious end sight, where it was like, oh, it's over now, everyone resume activities. I quickly got over it and just started figuring out how I could, okay, so how can I lead the pack on whatever we're doing, and how can I? So I started just researching as much as I could in terms of technology and like I said, the apps that can make, how can I make online teaching something engaging? How can I make online concerts something engaging? Like instead of worrying about I can't tell you how much, I'm just sick of all right, well, going back in person, I sure do miss in-person lessons. I sure do miss all this stuff. It's like, all right, you guys keep on with that. It's going to help it come back, How can we make this aspect of it as good as possible? So fortunately I'm in Georgia and not in Florida, and everything is way less money here. So I've been able to take a little bit of time and just kind of do a deep dive into it. And honestly, the thing that's been keeping me going is trying to keep my kids going and keeping them, the musical projects that we do are really fun because it just gives them an end and something to work on. And all right, we're working on this, and we do little porch concerts outside. And so we'll do that just so it's something that they can be like, good, we accomplished something. All right, let's work on something else. And then we keep moving forward to kind of keep them from being depressed. I got a 15-year-old, 15-year-old girl. So it's like I need to make sure that she's moving forward and not falling into some sort of teenage depression or, because these kids, man, she didn't have any social media, which I'm even going to hold off a little longer even now because I just don't want her to be comparing and, feeling like she's missing out on a lot. So, but it's been fun. I kind of dig it. I don't dig the situation that caused it, but I like, the opportunities that are now available, and people who would never have thought about this. Now it's a viable teaching tool. I could never have said to a university, hey, UNT, I'm going to show up on Zoom. Let's have all the kids come on Zoom and do that. I'd be like, that's crazy. Just fly out here. No problem. We'll pay you the XYZ dollars and the plane and the hotel and the this and the that, but you need to be here. There's no other effective way to educate. And now, because we're forced to it, they see that at least now, even if things go back to some semblance of normalcy, that at least now this is a viable option. So, all right, we can't bring Drew out, we can't bring you out, but we can do a Zoom class and we'll pay you X. Instead of paying you Y, because that's not in the budget, we can have different layers of things now. And I remember having this conversation with a buddy of mine, Mark, who has Gridbook, and he was like, yeah, last summer, he's like, we're doing online snare camp. And we were just like, what? And people were just like, this is crazy. It's not going to work if you're not there. And he's like, it was so great. And I remember like, man, if this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So I like the fact that now it's an option on the table no matter what now. And I think that's pretty cool.
Change the lanes here. Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to get in as like a percussion instructor? How did you get into the drum corps scene, teaching wise? And then like what advice you'd have for somebody else that wants to teach drum corps?
I don't think I've ever gotten like a job based on what I can do solely. I mean, one time, maybe Bluecoats, I guess, they'd see me online and they'd be like, hey man, Tom called me and he was like, we have so many vibes in the show in 2018 that we need some vibraphone help specifically, like 7 vibraphones, so many vibraphone features. But for the most part, like it's all about who knows that you can do the work, right? So, I mean, some people, you want to walk into a space and be entitled because of whatever reason or wherever you marched. And then no one wants to work with you. And someone's like, yeah, he's good, but, I'm not going to recommend him. And people's name are all they have. Edric ain't recommending anybody that he doesn't know is going to show respect and be a cool guy to work with. He doesn't want to get that phone call that was like, dude, this guy he's good, but he's just terrible to work with, I mean, I've heard of people who I are super talented, like work fast, but like when you try to change one of their parts, like a horn arranger try to change one of the parts, they'll fight you all day, storm off. It's just like, come on, man. I'm just telling you, maybe we should have B flats there in the marimbas, and you're like, no, you don't understand the way the harmony works. I did this and I did that, and they're not going to get any more work no matter how talented they are. So I would say, do the work. Try to do, if you're just getting started, try to work with somebody, do it for free, if you have to, or do. Yeah, I mean, if you have to, intern, call it an internship, call it whatever, call it apprenticing. Because honestly, I mean, that's when people can see your work with no pressure, like the relationship changes once money changes hands. And if you're not in a position where you think that you're, I've told people this all the time. Like, if a student wants to come play, more than down, they show up late, I'm gonna sit them down and have a conversation. They mess up a little bit, something's weird in rehearsal, I'm gonna sit them down and have the conversation. Here's what you should do. Let's try it again. Something's not right in the notes. We're gonna have a conversation. Once money starts changing hands, now I'm not here to educate or mentor. Now you're taking money out of my mouth and out of the other guy's mouth. Food out of our mouth and my kid's mouth. So now, if you're not gonna, you show up late, you're fired, and I don't want to see you again. So if you're ready for that, then be ready for that. But some people want to get paid and they want the mentorship and the education and, forgive me, I'm just young. I just started. Well, then, so I think it's always great to do that. And I think I did that with Edric, that first year I know I did when Scott and Ray was still there. And I learned a lot of lessons. He sat me down a lot of times and was just like, hey man, you can't be doing this. Can't be messing around like this. Can't, you're on your phone. People, he wouldn't have taken that time if he was paying me top dollar. I'd have just been fired. And I wouldn't have had a chance to build a relationship with Edric that built dividends over the course of many decades, And I think a lot of people are just looking to get that short-term cash without building that long-term skill acquisition and relationship building. That's really what your 20s should be about. I mean, you want to be a doctor, like a medical doctor. You're not looking for cash while you're in medical school. You're $500,000 in debt, sucking down ramen noodles. Parents' credit cards are maxed out because that you're building those relationships. You're waking up all day. Oh, so-and-so needs me in a mock trial for law school. Sure, I'm going. It doesn't matter if I haven't slept. I'm cutting off this date. I'm doing whatever because I got to show these guys I can do this work because it's going to come back around when they're looking for interns, right? But for some reason in music, we're like, yeah, but I need that $20 an hour right now. Well, dude, you're 22. You haven't done anything. Well, but I marched Blue Devils. And so I think that's the biggest thing is like show your work, like do the work. The money will come, do the work, be on time, be a great person to work with, be fun, be easygoing, lose the ego at the door, assume everyone's better than you, learn as much as you can, and the money will come. Like the jobs will come, the work will come, people will share it. But you're not going to get work just by being good. It's not going to happen. People are going to have to advocate for you and open those doors.
All right. Now, as far as getting in and teaching, you brought up that with the smaller front ensembles, it almost forces creativity because you have to do more with less. Would you suggest that would be something that someone who, like you just said, someone who's just trying to get their foot in the door, maybe go, instead of being like, oh, I'm trying to get my foot in the door, can I go be the fifth person on like West Boca staff, or be the number one guy in this small band where now it is all on me and you're going to learn how to make things work?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I definitely think, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being the fifth guy, but if that's all you're trying to do because you want to say that you taught at Broken Arrow, no one's going to give you the credit for, really, I thought that was insert big name guy here, his group. No one's ever going to know, oh yeah, well, I was the third, suspended cymbal tech and I used to tune the concert bass drum. Unless somebody else is kind of a jerk and just cares that they can say to their parents or their boosters that we hired this guy from Broken Arrow, but you're kind of hedging your bets. But then even then, when you go to the big program, you won't be ready, right? So I think that those lessons at Coral Springs, I watched the Coral Springs 2002 show when they did the planets. I had the pit during the Mercury thing. I had the pit with swing flags do this in a row. I don't know what I was thinking. I saw that at the FBA concert thing, like from 2001, 2002. I was like, Coral Springs, not Miami Springs. I was like, wow, what was I thinking? But it was like those moments that allow you to be like, just, there's no pressure. I could have done anything at Miami Springs. You know what I mean? And it caused me to always want to be creative and think about the next thing. If I had you don't get to change anything or be you at and I'm just using Broken Arrow because the name is coming to my head for a big program. But you don't get to like, all right, you know what? Let's try pods and doing this and changing this and everyone plays this. They're going to be like, no, dude, we need to win BOA. Here's the formula. Here's how we've cracked it. And here's what you're going to fall into, for the most part. That's, to me, like, that's great. But, being at a Miami Springs and a Coral Springs or a West, even a West Boca, in a new school when they just opened, like the sky was the limit, and working for people who are like that, but I think being at a small program and making your name, because just like Larry said, Larry saw Boca wasn't going to win anything, this just wasn't that kind of program where they were going to go win BOA and win Grand Nats and, do all this kind of stuff. Like that wasn't the way it was built. That wasn't what her priorities were. But she let me do what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? And when I got to do that, people like Larry will see it and be like, oh, there's no question about who that did that. You know what I mean? And I think having that freedom and being given the resources to grow and I made a lot of mistakes at Boca. I was there for like 16 years. I make a ton of mistakes. And being able to learn from that and have a person who was committed to you and to come back the next year and to fix those mistakes and to grow, I mean, that was invaluable for me.
So Mallet Lab thing, where did it come from? Like, what's the goal for it? Like, I noticed, like, I'm always following your posts as far as what like, oh, we're doing this year and that year, and it seems like it's just growing and growing and growing.
We started in 2017 because all the Mallet camps were very personality driven or college driven. So it was like, come to the UNT camp, fine. Go to Lee Howard Stevens camp where you're going to learn about his approaches and his things. So it was very personality driven. And for me, when I went into college at FAU, my first year, they didn't have a Mallet person. They had Tony Lavender on drums, teaching drum set. Right, Larry? Tony Lavender? That's right. Tony Lavender teaching drum set. And then they had Mike Parola from Lynn or Harrod Conservatory teaching like super contemporary classical percussion. And then because I was a jazz guy, they're like, we'll put you with David Hammer on piano. So I had these 3 private lesson rotations. And when I went to one of them, want to be like, yeah, I play this. I don't know anything about that other thing you do. I'm not really a jazz guy. Or somebody else, one guy was just like, drum corps is terrible, and spent like half of every lesson telling me how terrible jazz was and terrible drum corps was. And how we don't play that. And he's like, play scales. And I remember playing, and, I had big technique because that's all I really knew. And he's like, what? That's terrible. It's so awful. Everything is bad that you're doing. And I thought, I always stuck with me. So when I was thinking about, like, let's do a camp, and I had run camps for kids from when I had my academy, from 2007 to 2000. For like 8 years, I had run camps from the ages of 7 to 13 years old, general music camps, bass, voice, drums, guitar, piano, stuff like that. And while that was financially decent because parents pay for that stuff, you're marketing to parents really, it wasn't as artistically fulfilling. So when I had the opportunity, I was like, let's do a Mallet camp, and let's just do a camp, and let's get teachers from every aspect of every entry point of percussion. So a contemporary person who doesn't even know what drum corps is, a jazz person who doesn't care about technique as long as you're playing the changes type of thing, and a very heavy, a front ensemble technician. And let's have all of these guys come here, and we'll attract people from all of these different points of entry. And through this camp, they'll be introduced to these other areas that they may never have seen otherwise. And so that was really kind of the goal. So we have and the first year we did it at Arts Garage, which I had them pull because I founded it, but I wasn't working there at the time. We did it at Arts Garage, and I begged, borrowed, and stole every instrument I could, and leveraged every relationship I had to get teachers because I didn't know who was going to show up. And then we had like 17 kids from, I think, 3 states, and it was cool. It was cool. We were in the plus, and we just split the money between pretty much the teachers, and we were in the plus. Put them up at the Hyatt. And then the next year in 2018, we had 53 kids from 14 states and 3 different countries. And then in 2019, we had 55 kids from 6 countries, 15 states, including Australia. So it was cool. We grew, and we did it at Palm Beach Atlantic University, which was great. There, shout out to them for being so welcoming for us.
I find it really interesting the way you guys pivoted for this whole COVID thing.
We did it all online. We pivoted to all technology, Ableton, Pro Tools, Final Cut, composition. We didn't do a single thing about technique or tone production. Figured there's going to be a million people who are going to be doing all that stuff. And I also thought that who cares? I mean, at this point, obviously it's important stuff. Like, I'm a technique monger, but I wanted to fill the need that I didn't think other people would be able to fill. And I think people are they're going to have to make records from their house. They're going to have to, teach from their home. So what's the technology, and how can we get these students up to date on it and excited about it, not just tolerating it? And then even this year, believe it or not, I like to stay appropriately uncomfortable. And I felt like we were already on the same formula, and like we could do the same thing again, but it was just kind of like, what are we really offering? Are these kids really growing? What's next? What's the next gap that we can fill? And so we were going to do just vibraphone and electronics anyhow. And then the COVID thing happened before we started a heavy marketing push. So we were like, let's take the resources we have and these guys who play Mallet Station and are programming this crazy stuff and doing these crazy videos online already, and let's bring them all together to talk about things that people wouldn't talk about. Because you could talk about the technique all day long and it's fine, but how many kids have instruments at home? And honestly, it wasn't as big as it has been this year, but I knew that was going to happen because I knew we were doing stuff that people didn't quite value as much as they should yet. But I wanted to start, and honestly, I was just as excited as the first year. Like, I loved the feeling of I don't know if it's going to work. 10 people may come, 100 people may come. But let's make it happen, and because once you build it, then it's a reality, and then you can move forward from there. So it really is just all about finding the opportunities within the confines of what we have, because there's lots of new opportunities out there. They're not what we thought, and it's not what we maybe ideal for some, but there's a ton of opportunities within the situation we have if that's what we're focused on. But if we're just focused on what's lost, we'll just keep waiting around and it'll just pass us by, So same idea.
Have you found that as you guys now you get the ball rolling on this and it's becoming more popular, have you found that it's easier to find instructors to come in and work with you guys?
Yeah, it's easier to find. Everyone's home, so everyone's kind of like, sure, I'll do that, I guess. If they haven't been otherwise committed, they're just kind of like, you can there's big names that I would never be able to get on the phone that I'm just like, hey man, you want to do a thing? Sure, whatever. Which is pretty cool. But I think that, but the cool thing too now is Mallet Lab doesn't have to be a summer thing. With the virtual thing, we're doing Hal Rosenfeld did a film scoring thing. His was the most popular thing that was there. It was a 3-part course. So now we're going to do another one. We're going to package that 3-part course and do it. We're going to have a concert series. We're just going to keep plugging away at content just to stay making some noise,
It's always great talking to you. You want to plug all your stuff, your social media and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. It's not a xylophone. It's, Yeah, that's pretty much the one, man. My website is notaxylophone.com. Everything's not as Twitter. It's not a xylo. You know, or Mallet Lab. Any of those things, you can find me and reach out. But it's been fun, man. I just love talking to friends. Just like Edric said, man, we may be physically further apart, but I almost feel closer to people that I was, I wouldn't talk to otherwise. It's been pretty cool.
I'll just add in closing, I'm just personally proud of you, Drew. You're like a brother to me. I love you. Yeah. And I mean, it's been some great relationships, tough love.
Yeah.
We didn't always see eye to eye on a lot of things, and that was good. That was good because I think we both simultaneously brought out the best out of each other. But it was always been more good than and I don't want to even say bad, good than hard learning. And I think you've always been a person that I admire because you could take constructive criticism and not take it personally and grow from that. And likewise, you've brought me to the light of things and perceptions and how to deal with people, and I've become a better person for that. So I just want to just take a moment to just tell you how much I appreciate our relationship.
Thanks, man. Love you too, buddy.